Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, well, look, just us. So why don't we keep this relatively informal, as they say? Okay. So why are you both here? Let me ask that question.
All right.
What do you want to get out of it?
Well, I've got two interests. One is that as part of the general sales, which have been enterprise sales, it's always been that you're looking for the high value clients and things like that. The other side is that I'm starting a couple of businesses from startup mode. And really what I want to do is they are the kind of products where if you get a flagship customer, you will basically go up multiple levels once. So the idea of being, how do you, as a, I'll call it an unsafe pair of hands, forget the innovation, but you may not be perceived as a safe pair of hands. How do you make that transition? On one hand, I'm doing it from where I am a safe pair of hands, and now I'm moving to an area where I'm not necessarily perceived as an expert and authority, but I know that this is something that once we put one flag in the ground, we're a long way down that path.
Okay, you got an example?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. So we're using AI to do some things that I suppose if you look at local government, state government infrastructure, people can't do. The big four can't do it, no one can do it. And it's an overseas product that's been done and done very well. We're bringing it to Australia, and we believe that it can make a big difference in a number of areas. But it's having those conversations, finding, if you like, a sponsor, and also avoiding the challenge of we can come up with the idea, we can get so far, and then they turn around and say, well, you've got to go to tender, we're going to get one of the big four to look at it, and you suddenly lose everything. If you like, you've created the idea, you've put it there, and someone else has said, well, we're a safer pair of hands and we can do it.
Okay.
So the more I can learn and get your insights on attracting and getting those conversations and getting further down the track, that's what's going to help me.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. And Damien?
Yeah, the reason for me attending this is a general sort of upskilling, information gathering, general sort of, I left my role in December last year, and I've been in sales for 10 years, in advertising sales. I'd gone through that linear process, and I didn't really want the next sort of linear step where that was. So I branched out, and I'm looking for sort of, looking to use those sales skills in new avenues. So that's what the last sort of 6 months has been. So it's really about, just using opportunities like this to gather more information, upskill myself, learn new tips, tricks, talking to new people about different things, and general just upskilling myself and my knowledge and ways of doing things. And always keen to hear what other people have got to say about the world of sales and how to do things, and just trying to absorb as much as I can.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Okay, so now number one, as we all know, there's a heck of a lot more competition and a heck of a lot more noise. Just to get someone's attention. So I don't know where you both sit when it comes to the confluence of marketing, prospecting, and the actual sales process, and the importance of those three things, because I think we tend to get caught up in marketing and thinking that marketing solves all problems, whereas really sales is the thing where unless somebody actually buys something and you have that, and in our sorts of environments, it is generally a one-on-one conversation with somebody. Nobody's going to spend the sorts of money that we would want to charge just off a web page. And so it is, we're all about how you marry those three things together. So the marketing, if you like, educates, it brings in, it helps to position you correctly, so that people coming searching. So if you think about it this way, And let's just do this. Come on, you can change. Why do things not ever want to work when they're supposed to work? Okay, this doesn't seem to want to change, which is, well, absolutely fabulous. Okay, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to talk. The tech doesn't want to seem to work. Okay, so basically there are two types of people, if you like, in your market. They're the people who are ready to buy, and that might be somewhere between 5 and 10% of your market, and they know they have a problem and they are searching for a solution. And they're the ones that where you can target Google AdWords and you can target advertising of different types, and they're actually searching very specifically for something. But then there are all the other people who might not know that there is something out there that they could actually use. And I think AI is a classic example of this. Before AI and ChatGPT hit the world, none of us were really thinking about all of this. And now all of a sudden everybody is jumping on that particular bandwagon going, hey, fantastic. So how do we actually get in front of the right people? And let's see if this thing does want to work. Try that again. Nope, I am not having a lot of luck today. Sometimes you unplug and you replug. Nope. Okay. Okay, we're going to do this in a different way. Yeah. Just bear with me for a second. I'm going to shut that down. And I'm going to restart it just to see if it makes a difference.
Otherwise, Rashid, you always have the option to explain the model and the boys to draw it for themselves.
Yep. Okay, we got traction. All right, I think we got traction.
All right.
Amazing. You may want to just put that into speaker view if you want to. Otherwise, I can spotlight it, whichever.
Why don't you spotlight it?
I'll spotlight it. I'll put myself back in the gallery. All right. So basically, one of the things that we talk about is this whole confluence between between marketing, prospecting, and selling. Okay. So marketing tends to attract broader market. It's a one-to-many approach. But for the people who could be in your target market, it's always wise to go out and actually prospect, ring people who could be good, suitable prospects, because they don't necessarily know that you exist until you call them and you talk to them. And then selling is where the rubber actually hits the road, where you want to have that one-on-one conversation. But if you look at what marketing does, marketing helps you engage with likely prospects. And because when you think about it, most of us who are looking for something are doing our own research. We're already 60, 70, 80% down the buying funnel, and then we might want to talk to somebody. But if we don't know that something exists, but next I drink, yes, I will, dear. Thank you. If you don't know that a solution exists, then that is where prospecting comes into play in a big way. Because if we didn't know about a solution, how would we even be looking for it? And then the point with prospecting is then to qualify people and then move them at some point into a sales conversation. And if they're not ready to buy at any point, you keep engaging them over here through, once again, your marketing. So it's really a cycle that goes all the way around. Okay. But if we look at how we go about this, one of the primary things we do is use visual models to actually show a ascension model and allow people to diagnose where they happen to be. Now, because we work with businesses and business owners who want to sell more and be more efficient in their sales process, but also get to a point where if they're running a business, the business should be independent of them, where they have choices to be able to either work in the business themselves, have the business run independently because they go off and do other things, or be in a position to sell the business. And one of the reasons we say that every business where you have people working with you and for you should get to this point is you just don't know what's likely to happen. You may not think you want to sell the business, but things can go wrong. I mean, I'm talking to a particular organization at the moment, the husband and wife team, mid-sized accounting firm. Wife has very serious health issues. She's not going to be able to work in the business probably forever, and she's only young. So what do? Yeah, does he sell the business? Does he run the business, as a cash cow? How does he get it into that place where it will actually happen? So the way we demonstrate this, and it's something that I would suggest that you take on as well, because it's a really good way of having people diagnose, showing them a model and having them diagnose where they are in that model. So when we work with people, we say, okay, there is effectively an S-curve in every business, if you're familiar with an S-curve. And with that S-curve, basically, we say there are a number of stages in the business. And the first stage in the business is where you're working for the business. And for the business means that you're working as it's a startup phase of the business. You're basically it. You're doing everything. Cash flow tends to be a bit inconsistent sometimes because you're going out, you're selling something, you're delivering something, you forget to go and do any marketing and sales, and then the whole cycle turns and you're madly scrambling for money. And therefore, in this part of the business, basically what you want to do is to start making some money. And as you move forward into the business, you start moving into the next phase, which is working in the business. And when you work in the business, you are starting to get some staff, outsource different functions, and you're starting to get some leverage. Let's make that a bit smaller. You're starting to get some leverage, and therefore, effectively, you're buying back some time. And then as you move forward, at some point, you want to get to a point where you're working on the business. And working on the business means that you're far more strategic. You're setting up leadership structures, management structures. You have time to sit back and think, because when you're working in the business, everything still probably depends on you from the point of view of, even though you might have staff, everything still revolves around you. But when you're working in the business, you have a leadership structure. And then the final stage is basically beyond the business. And beyond the business means that you get choice. The business should run independently of you. And that gives you the choice of working at part. You might say, look, I really enjoy certain parts of the delivery. I'm going to do that. Or it might be that I want to run it as a completely independent cash cow, so I can go and start another business or do whatever I want to do. But you're still always, in all of these stages, you're always still the rainmaker, because all the way through, you need to make sales. And sales is key. It just comes down to actually who does the selling. But you're ultimately responsible all the way through this. Okay. So when we work with people, we show them this particular model, and we say, look, at every one of these stages, there are risks. You can get to here, but if you don't do the right thing, it's going to go down. If you get to here and this consolidation phase over here doesn't work, you're going to do this. And at each stage, there are risks. And our job is to help you understand those risks and make sure that you don't fall into them, and make sure that the curve keeps going upwards at each stage as you consolidate, as you move up and you move up. Okay? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Now,
what's interesting about that is it also allows you to self-diagnose where you're at. So when I say to somebody, okay, this is the journey. Where do you reckon you're at? And interestingly enough, Most people will say they're somewhere between in and on. Some people, now we're working with a client at the moment. They're one of our oldest clients from donkeys years ago, and they've just come back, and we're talking to them about moving to that beyond stage where they want to get there within, say, 2 to 3 years. So they have a solid business, but they realize that they're still it. And they need to put in the systems, the sales systems, the delivery systems, so that they could be in a position to sell the business in 2 to 3 years. Now, whether they sell it or not is immaterial, but the point is, can they get there? And so if you use a system like this, and that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, you can also do this. You can also say people have a ladder, and a classic martial arts metaphor. You start at white and you go to black. And how do you climb this ladder? And usually in that it will be some sort of dollar figure as you go up the ladder. So you can say, okay, if you're in business, if you're a solo practice, for instance, like us, you might start at X number of dollars, and then as you climb the ladder, you go up to whatever Z number of dollars. Okay. But when we're dealing with businesses, we tend to prefer the S curve because it shows a journey with consolidation. Does that make sense? Any thoughts, questions around that?
Well, I suppose the fact that you have people wearing multiple hats, particularly in small businesses,
Mm-hmm.
How do you think they should deal with the challenge of dealing with that? So on one hand, you're wearing the hat as a salesperson, you're wearing the hat as a marketing person,
Mm-hmm.
you're also trying to be the account manager or whatever. You're also
Mm-hmm.
trying to say, right, I need to get some time and plan that next step. So and there's probably, I might be asking a selfish question here because I'm sort of getting pushed down this path whether I like it or not. But yeah, just in terms of that, as particularly in a small business where the multiple roles could be divvied amongst the same person, you're wearing multiple hats.
Okay, so then how do you change from one hat to the other?
Yeah.
Is what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Michael Gerber, then EOS came along and basically, on some level, took his idea and said, okay, let's make it EOS. I've never seen any attribution, which is interesting. So effectively, if you have roles and responsibilities that are very well delineated, when we work with a client, we say, okay, this is basically what you need to do. So let me just get rid of that. Oh, don't tell me it's going to do that again. Let's see. Stop. Start again.
It's having a tanty day.
It is having a tanty day. Yeah. If it changes. Did it change? Yes, it did. Okay. Not need that. Yeah, it's changing. I think I know what's causing it, and I'll have to see what that is afterwards. Okay, what was I saying? Yes, all right. So basically, what you need to do is you need to delineate all the various roles and responsibilities. And you need to say, okay, while I'm doing this particular role, I'm sitting in this particular hat. When I'm doing this particular role, I'm sitting in this particular hat. But what I say to people is you have to have really good boundary systems. So how does somebody hand over from one role to the next role? What are the inputs that you expect and what are the outputs? So if you're familiar with any sort of API system in a programming language, that's basically what it is. Okay. So how do you define for role A handing over to role B, what are the things that have to be in place so that the information from role A can go seamlessly into role B? And this is where I think people fall over. Okay.
Yeah. I would agree, because even thinking about myself, it's easy to be wearing multiple hats and thinking of pet A, B, and possibly even C at the same time. So you're joining the dots, but you're not doing that vertical of giving all the output. You're
Yep.
taking little bits across at a time.
Yep.
And it does bite you in the bum eventually.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me just try this again. Okay. Try it again. Yeah. So any other, Damien, anything stand out for you out of all of that?
So it's really interesting to see. I'm not in the same place as Shane in terms of where I'm at currently, but certainly in the future it would be something that I would want to, certainly potentially business plan. So it's really good to sort of see that, and actually the transition, just talking about the transition from different hats to one another, what you need to do. And it's, for me, it's almost like a discipline thing in many ways, knowledge and discipline, and just being able to do that from a holistic point of view, I thought is just really good to hear.
Okay, so coming back to all of us, all right, so one of the things that we need to do is to uniquely position ourselves and decide what market we're actually targeting and who we're targeting. And there are, when it comes to positioning, we have to look at who we are and what we do, what our experience is, and who we are as people and what our expertise is. Because if you think about it, we've all got very similar expertise and we've probably got similar experience. And the experience comes down to the particular industry that you happen to be working in. Okay. But what is very different for all of us is essentially our essence, who we are as people, what our values and beliefs are, who do we vibe with as people, and who will people vibe with us as us. Okay. And it's that combination that allows us to be unique. And when it comes to working for a particular niche market, and this is something that we say to everybody, narrow down the market that you're working with, because you can't be everything to everybody. There's simply no way of doing that. And if you say that, okay, for argument's sake, let's just say that you only work with IT companies. IT companies think in a particular way. It's not that their businesses are really any different from anybody else's business, but they have nuances, and everybody thinks that their business is different, and everybody thinks that their industry is different. So if you go and you say, okay, I work with IT companies, or I work with HR companies, or I work with accountants. I came across somebody who does IT only for lawyers. He's an ex-lawyer. Okay. So lawyers think, he understands us. That gives you a really big advantage when you're talking to them, because you can talk in their particular language. So that's where the industry comes in. And it also allows you to define the very specific problems and outcomes and solutions that these people want, because you understand them really, really well. Now, having said that, there's a great argument for having people from outside your industry come and have a look, because an outsider will notice things that you don't, because everybody in the industry follows everybody else in the industry. Everybody's doing the same stuff. And it's that classic case of that old meme of, the housewife, and I know I'm being stereotypical here, cooking turkey dinner, cutting the legs off the turkey because when she puts it in the oven. Okay. When somebody asks, why are you doing this? She said, well, my mother did this. When somebody asks the mother, well, why did I do this? Well, my mother did this. So they go to the grandmother and they say, why the heck did you do that? Well, the oven was too small. So I cut the legs off. And it's this, everybody follows everybody else paradigm that is a really silly way of doing business, if you like. So it takes an outsider very often to come along and say, okay, what's going on? And that's a real benefit for us coming into an organization, saying, okay, well, why are you doing that? Okay. So once you've got that, you can you can look at the fundamental behind all of our businesses, which is effectively what we call the demand triangle. And the demand triangle is, who is the message? What are the problems you solve? What are the outcomes you get? Who is the market? What's the demographic and the psychographic? And the demographic are all of the physical attributes, the size of the company, the industry, the location. All of those issues are demographics. The psychographics is, how do they think? What are their values and beliefs? Are they forward thinking? Do they use technology and the latest technology? What is it? Are they bricks and mortar and they're very sort of traditional? How do they actually go about doing business? But then the key really is down here, which is traffic and conversion. Because as any shopkeeper knows, you've got to get foot traffic. In our businesses, you've got to get your message in front of people who are likely to be in a position to buy. And that's key. There's no point in prospecting with people who are not going to be in your marketplace. You're just wasting time. And then the real key is over here, which is conversion. And a mistake that we see a lot of is people advertise, they get a lot of leads, or they get lead generation companies to supposedly get them leads, but the conversion rate is really low. And so rather than spending money on getting leads and traffic and doing a lot of prospecting, first fix your conversion rate. So if your conversion rate isn't at least 60% to even 70%, that's the thing I'd be fixing first, because that's where the money is. And then from that, looking at how you keep the client for as long as possible. It's the, would you like fries with us with this? How do you keep them coming back for more? Because the lifetime value is the thing where your profit is. And the longer the lifetime and the greater the lifetime, the more money you make and the more money you can then spend in getting people in the door in the first place. And that's something that most people, I think, don't realize. So when you're looking at the demand triangle, what you really want to do is to look at the problems first, because we all move away from pain and we all move towards some gain. But generally speaking, we will move away from pain first. But in a sales situation, unless the pain is big enough, they're not going to take action. The status quo in a sales situation is going to be the biggest killer of a deal. Status quo and risk. Because if people think that the work to put the solution in is greater than the hassle of keeping the solution, they're not going to do it. It's as simple as that. If somebody thinks that the risk of putting this solution in outweighs the benefit, and risk comes down to a personal risk, it's not just a company risk, it's a personal risk. If I'm going to lose my job, if I'm going to lose my status because this thing didn't work, if they're going to blame me if it didn't work, or if I put this thing in, am I going to be made redundant? Those are all the things that stop deals from going forward. So it's really important to understand what the pain is, but also what the aspiration is. And if the aspiration is too big, sometimes they won't do it if at the slightest little issue that comes up. And I'll give you a classic example of this. So, 40 years ago, I was in multi-level marketing with Amway. And Amway's whole shtick was the aspiration. You had this wonderful life. You had this great, hobnob with the rich and famous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There was only one problem. You had to actually build a business. And you had to build a business by bringing people into your distributorship. And you soon found out that your friends and family were not going to join you. So you had to start talking to strangers, and you had to pick up the phone. In those days, you had to pick up the phone and call people. And you had to call people and say, look, I want to invite you to a business meeting. And everybody in those days knew what Amway was. And the first thing was, is it Amway? Yeah, click. Okay, I can guarantee that after 3, 4, or 5 of those calls, the vast majority of people quit. So much for the aspiration of the great life and the whatever. The work of actually doing it to get there was more painful than the aspiration. So we're more than happy to stay with their whatever lives that they had, whether they were happy or not, they weren't going to change. And so it's really important to understand that. So one of the things that we talk about with our clients, and we actually put this into practice, both as a standalone and as well as, let me just move this out of the way. As well as a way to find out what you're doing well and what you could improve. We actually survey physically, as in we interview our clients and clients. And these are pretty in-depth interviews. They're not fly by, not 5-10 minute interviews. Sometimes they can go for an hour, depending on the type of person we're actually dealing with. And what it does is it provides comprehensive insights into what it is you do well, and it also validates the fact that the problems you're actually solving are the problems that your clients actually want to solve. Because sometimes you could be doing something that you think is really important, but the client doesn't actually think it's all that important. Seen it happen any number of times. And therefore, you're wasting time where you're not actually getting any value. The client is not getting any value. You're wasting time and money. Okay? And we've done this any number of times. So the first time we did this, well over 20 years ago, the company knew they had a problem. They were putting in a new solution, and they said, look, can you call all of the major directors of this organization? And we're talking multinational organization that we're doing the work for. And I spoke to a number of their sales directors, and they all said, look, these are the particular problems here, 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 and here. And I went back and I said, look, these are the problems. This is what you need to do to fix them. And they came back to us and they said, well, you saved our business because we now know what the issues were. Okay. Just recently, we had a client who is an engineering consultant who does very specialized stuff. Part of the work he does is for major building developments. And so he would get contracted by the major engineering consultancies who would then work with the developer. And he would do the work and then bill the developer directly, bypassing the consultancy, the engineering consultancy, the middleman. Okay. So I rang a number of these consultancies and I said, okay, look, just tell me what's going on here. And I said, this is really interesting. So what would happen if this guy, his name's Craig, actually went through you, white labeled it. You then went to your client, who is the developer, so that the developer actually never knows that Craig was involved. They said we'd go from about 10% of all jobs to about 80 to 90% of all jobs. Okay. I said, great. That was the first one. I rang the second one, said the same thing. Rang the third one, said the same thing. And obviously, I'll get back to Craig pretty damn quickly and say, look, this is what you need to do. Now, this was a couple of years ago, and I rang Craig a couple of weeks ago, and I said, oh, by the way, how's it going? And he said, 3 of those major consultancy firms have done this consistently. One of the really, really large ones with 300 odd people have taken it in-house, okay? But that is just because I phoned somebody, asked the right questions, and got an answer which massively increased the amount of money that he was actually making out of each of these companies. We had another instance where a client was dealing with large schools in education, but his big enchilada product was too large for some small public schools. And so what we said was, okay, let's just hive off part of this product. They can be as a starter for these small schools. And then if they want the rest of it, they can have the rest of it down the track. And that increased the amount of work that he got because, very often you want to be able to say, okay, what is it your clients really want, and be able to hive those things off. And that goes for any sale. If you say to somebody, look, if we go back to here and we say, look, this is the journey we're going to beyond, but that beyond might take you 2-3 years. People are going, oh, okay, well, that's a long time. What can we do in 3 to 6 months? what is a result I can get you right now? Or what is a result I can get you in 1 month, for example? Okay, 3 months, 9 months, because then they start seeing results, and we get results here, and then we move here, and then we get another lot of results in another 3 months. That makes it easier to digest. It makes it easier to actually buy something. So when it comes to your market, so we talked about the different aspects of the market. Okay, and this is a pie chart that's came out, some guy called Chet Holmes, a well-known marketer, came up with, and he basically analyzed the market. Now, whether it's 3% ready to buy here or 10%, it doesn't really matter, but a small percentage of your market is ready to buy. They are looking for solutions, and we've seen lots of statistics around senior executives will do a lot of research before they want to talk to a vendor. And that is where your marketing system comes into place. Because your marketing system is there to basically educate your prospects. It's basically there to position yourself as the go-to person in your field. And then when somebody is ready to do something, it engages with them. But the big mistake is to just rely on marketing because of these people over here, open to a conversation, because that's where prospecting comes in, because they may not be actively looking for something. That's when you need to say, okay, who are these people that would be ideal? What are these problems that I can solve and the outcomes? Who is that particular market? And can I, in some form, get in front of them economically? And the economically is really important because you need to know what your cost per acquisition is. And then if you know that, then you can go out there and you can actively prospect. And the prospecting is all about qualification. And then saying, okay, if somebody is a prospect and they may be ready to buy, fantastic. You can then go in and have a sales conversation. But they may not be ready to buy. So then you say, okay, if you're not ready to buy, I'm going to keep engaging with you and I'm going to keep sending you educational material. And that's the realm over here of marketing. And I think the mistake that we make is that we think everybody needs to be ready, but they're not ready. People, we've had, it's really interesting. So we had a client last month. They sent me a DM on LinkedIn saying, look, I really like your videos. I like the stuff you write and vibe well. Can you help? Company doing about 18, 20 million a year. Okay. Number of salespeople in the IT space. I said, great. Now, interestingly enough, I went back into my CRM and I saw, I've sent this guy emails over the last 2 years. Completely ignored him. I'd sent him direct messages on LinkedIn. Completely ignored him. It was as if he hadn't noticed any of this in some respects. But when he was ready, he turned up. Okay? And it happens a lot. You might meet somebody somewhere and you just keep in contact with them. And you just on a low-key basis, keep in front of them so that when they are ready to do something, you're the person that they're going to come to. Because there's this thing called the 90-day rule, which was created by a woman called Wendy Evans. And she worked for Saki and Saki and Thomas Cook International and a number of other companies like that. And she noticed that people remembered you for 90 days. If on day 91, somebody came along with something that you could have done, they forgot you and went with the other person. And we've seen this play out in a number of cases. And it's fascinating to watch it happen. But it's also sad because you know that you could have prevented this by some form of keep in touch, whether that's just an email, whether that's a direct message, whether that's a phone call. So how do you keep in touch? Well, one of the things that we do is that we have a number of different white papers and ebooks that we put out. We also put out a lot of content every week. And so if somebody, for instance, downloads the Attract High Value Clients, we've had them turn up. They've printed out 50 something pages. They've highlighted things. They put sticky notes in, and they've already made a decision to become a client. They just wanted to make sure I didn't have two heads. So when we work with clients, we actually create some of this material for them and say, okay, this is a funnel that we're going to use to attract these people into the funnel and then basically nurture them along the way. Because if you look at this thing, and this is an old Microsoft chart where they talked about the number of steps it takes to get a client in the door. And in the old days, it was around 5 contacts. These days, people are talking about 11, 12, 15, 20 contacts before somebody does something. On average, if you want to phone somebody, it might take 3 or 4 goes before somebody will actually pick up the phone. So if we're in sales, one of the things we say is, okay, ring somebody, you ring them on their mobile, you leave a message, a voicemail. Not everybody will listen to the voicemail. You send a text message. You then ring them again. You might then send them an email if you've got an email address. You send them a LinkedIn message. So it's this number of different touch points until somebody actually picks up the phone and talks to you. And what's interesting is that even if they've got all of these other messages, when you ring them, it's almost as if they've never heard of you in some respects, but they will pick up the phone. So let's assume that you are talking to somebody and it is a sales conversation. So what we always talk about in our sales trainings and really inculcate this with people is that you need to stay above the line. You need to stay in the pain and the gain. So this side over here is the pain, and this side here is the gain. What happens, though, with a lot of people in sales is that they end up talking about the solution and how it's delivered, how long the company's been in existence, who all the other clients are. And honestly, none of us cares at that point. We will at some point want to know what the solution is and how it's delivered, obviously. But initially, all we're concerned about is relevance. What is the relevance to me right now? Do you understand my priorities right now? Do you understand where it is that I could be going if you worked with me? And then once you've elicited the pain, you can then talk about the gain. And this is where you can come back to that model over there. Because you can say, look, this is the journey that we take you on. Let's help you diagnose. And can you diagnose where the heck you are on this journey? So I use the metaphor of the vomiting salesperson. So you go in there the naked salesperson, the naked salesperson, because most people go in there, vomit all over about their solutions. But if you're the naked salesperson, you go in there with no PowerPoint, no laptop, no nothing except a recording device. And I say recording device, could be your phone. I don't care how you record it, but you record it. Okay. And people say to me, but why would you want to record it? I say, because then you know exactly what they said and you can replay it back in any statement of work. And notice I didn't say proposal, I said statement of work that you give them. You can say, this is exactly what they said. And believe it or not, people actually say, oh, this is exactly what I said. Wow. Well, it was recorded. Okay. And then people say to me, oh, but don't people object to it being recorded? I said, no one has ever objected in 20 years. Nobody. I tell them, I'm going to record this so that I can take better notes. I don't have to sit there scribbling. It's all. And these days, you transcribe it through ChatGPT or Otter. You get a synopsis, which is incredibly accurate. When it saved me with a client recently, I interviewed 8 salespeople for an hour, recorded it, put it through both Otter and ChatGPT, and it laid out exactly what the problems were, what the solution should have been, which I knew anyway, but it saved me having to go through and write each one and extract, type, send it off to the client, and he said, this is excellent. This is the best thing I've ever seen. Okay. Could I have done it myself? Absolutely. And I would have done it myself, except these days, the tools are so good that it saves you time. And this is all about saving time. Okay. So this is for all of you who, Damien especially, I guess, when you're dealing with larger organizations, how do you actually network, navigate, and negotiate with the various stakeholders? And I say to people, it's very rare that there's only going to be one decision maker in any organization. Even if it's a couple, they're going to confer. And the biggest mistake is not understanding who the power brokers are and not understanding who influences the deal. And the minute somebody says, I'm the only decision maker, that's usually a red flag. Because there will be formal networks and there will be informal networks, and understanding who those networks are. And this is basically an area that we really work with people to map out how to actually go into an organization, figure out who's who in the zoo, and the right questions to ask along the way to make sure that you don't get blindsided. Because we had a client, and they worked on this particular deal, and this is after we finished working with them. So they'd worked on a particular deal for a year. The day they were going to sign the deal, and it was a big deal, the CEO says, have you spoken to HR? Because it was an HR solution for retail management. And they said, no. It went to HR, and HR said, well, we've been working on our own solution for the last year. 1 year's worth of work went out the toilet, went out the window, because they didn't actually look at who's who in the zoo and talk to all the various players involved. It's a big mistake that we see quite often. It's surprising how often this happens. So, given all of this, comments, questions?
I think if I just go back to when you were talking about you've got your 3, your 10%. And my experience is a lot of time where when, as a salesperson, particularly when you're under the pump, that idea that no means no, when it actually means not now.
Yeah.
And the problem is that in a lot of cases, it's, well, I know that you're somewhere, maybe you're not in the 30%, because I don't believe you're not simply not interested. How can you not be interested in my product, in my solution? So I'm now at the 60% that needs to be educated. And so a lot of people, well, then let me tell you everything I know, because once you've done that, you'll be drinking my Kool-Aid and we'll be there. And I've seen that time and time again. There's almost like I've got a script, and whether I start at the top or whether I start halfway down really depends on where you are. And so from that point, you're not interested. Well, you need to be interested, Rashid. You just don't know. And we've worked with other customers who like you, so you must be interested. You should be interested. And then after that, it's the education. Well, you just don't know. And quite often it's almost like everything is about me. I've got to do this. I've got to tick the box that I took you through the process. When in actual fact, you could have a much better and a higher value conversation by not being tied to it and just talking about their problems. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the big things. There is that desperation in so many people, and this is why people are going away from salespeople and just saying it's far easier not to deal with them.
See, the biggest mistake that I think people make in sales is that they talk about their solutions rather than talking about the problems that the person has, and really delving into those problems and the implications of staying with the status quo.
Mm. Yeah,
Because-
if you ask the why, why would they change?
Yeah.
And then quite often, so I deal with software, and so if they've been in a why and we have to upgrade. So if they have, then I want the path of least resistance. I would do nothing if I could. Only because my vendor has told me we're going to be unsupported. So I want the lowest cost, path of least resistance, the least change. If on the other hand, I've said, well, we need to upgrade because our competitors are wiping the floor with us and we need to get ahead of them and we need to do that, then I'm open to change. I'm open to doing things, and there's a journey to be had. What does good look like and everything? But if you come back to the status quo, if the only reason I'm having to change the status quo is because of an external factor, then I will try and make my change as close to the status quo as I can.
Yeah,
it will
absolutely.
be the path of least resistance, the lowest cost, the least change, the least people involved, whatever it is. It's got to look as much like what we have now as I can.
Yeah. And what we've also seen is sometimes people will put solutions in because senior executive says, okay, this is a new way of doing things, and it's going to improve efficiency, blah blah blah. But the users who've been doing this for 20 years will not adopt.
Yeah, and that's the thing. My why as the CEO can be anything I want. It can be esoteric or anything, but unless everyone is on the same page, when you get to how you implement it and what you implement, because their version of the outcome is far different to mine.
Well, this is where it comes in. Okay, so you need to figure out who the users are. You need to figure out who the tech people are. You need to figure out who the economic buyer is.
Yeah.
Because it's all very well to say, okay, we're putting this thing in, and it's a thing from the top. But if the users don't want to use it, it's going to fail. One of my jobs long ago was selling IT solutions, as in testing solutions and other things. And I was talking to a major steel company, and they had spent 2 years putting in an SAP system, and they had 100 people, literally 100 people in Chatswood in an office working on this thing. And they did a go live basically overnight, over a weekend, and they came back in, and the users said, we can't process any orders. Okay, and they basically junked 2 years worth of system. And you wouldn't believe how much money there was that they'd spent on this thing, just because nobody had actually spoken to the users and asked them what they wanted. Okay. All right. So it's coming up to 10 o'clock, and so I don't want to hold you up. So how can I possibly help you, Shane? Is there something I can do to help you?
Look, I'm not quite at the point yet where I've worked out what I'm going to be doing, but I'm getting very pushed to where we'll need to have a conversation about my next, I suppose, a career chapter about the businesses. I think there's relevance in that. If I just go down the job path, I think it's a different conversation, but I'm getting to the crossroads very quickly.
Okay, no, fair enough.
Yeah,
because,
I enjoy these sessions. They're great.
Well, I know you keep going back, so you must be getting something out of it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Because look, I mean, we work with solo practitioners all the way up to mid-sized companies doing 20, 30 million. And there are different things that we do with them, obviously.
Yeah.
With the smaller end of town, dare I say it, it tends to be more marketing and sales focused, working out, how they actually get their ducks in a row, how they go to market, what the problems are they solve, what makes them unique, how do they actually set up a funnel to bring in clients through the marketing system, but then also how to effectively prospect. Okay. Oh, was Avinash actually there? I didn't see him there. Okay, there you go. And then obviously with larger organizations, they sometimes it's more sales focused rather than marketing focused, working with their sales teams. But then with the business owners and the leaders, setting up the leadership structure so that they can actually move to a more strategic level and get to a point where the business could be sold should they wish to do that. Because my thing is dig the well before you need the water.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and I've seen this a number of times. I mean, let's okay. So if I was a bit morbid about it, I've had at least 4, if not 5 clients die at some point. Okay. Now, if I was a financial planner, I'd say, yeah, that's pretty normal, because my clients are going to be older and they're going to die. But for instance, in one particular case, the son, it was a financial planner. He was in his 70s. The son was becoming a financial planner. He died. In this case, the son has been able to take over the business. Okay. In other cases, somebody dies, the business has to go into a fire sale because the structures aren't there.
Yeah, and also this first case, he knew that he was sick.
Yeah,
so
he knew.
He had
he was
quite a long time to plan. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we were at the funeral yesterday, 65-year-old man, massive heart attack, goodbye. Okay.
We're all going, yeah, okay. We're all that age.
I think Damien is probably not
Maybe
quite
it's a
there
bit
yet.
younger. But it's a sobering thing. So look, if you'd like some help, but look, we'd also really appreciate, bringing more people into these things, and also referrals, people that in your network that could possibly use what we help people with.
I just while I was listening to all of you, I just want to run past to the two of you, Damien and Shane, if you don't mind. We, as you saw, we use a lot of models to take people through and make it a bit more accessible, I guess, because if we were to offer something along the lines of how to use models in the sales conversation or even in a prospecting conversation, what are your thoughts on that?
Like how to use
models,
visual models,
rather than sitting with a laptop, drawing it in front of them. Using a whiteboard is more of a presentation that way. How to develop these things and what to do to present differently, because ultimately a sales conversation is a presentation, if you think about it.
Well, it's a collaboration.
Yeah. If it were turned into something like that, would you think that could be useful?
I think it's in short, yes. I think, but as we talked about in these Rashida's you talk about, it's about what's going to be most receptive to a particular person, to the client. And that's about knowing the client, knowing maybe how they work from a psychological, physiological level. Are they a graphical person? Are they, some people are just numbers in Excel, and you put an Excel sheet in front of them and it's what they thrive on. I'm a very visual person, so I love all these visuals, which I've taken screen grabs of, and that's how I work. But not everyone's like me, so I think there's a dynamic element to that. If it's more of a one-on-one or business to business, I think there'll just need to be if I was going to that, I would be doing that on a dynamic element, which I've done in the past with different clients. What's going to work best for them? So,
yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah, absolutely, because they're big picture people and they're very detailed people in this everything in between.
It's almost more like a facilitation session rather than a traditional sales conversation, and I think you get a completely different engagement if you would do it.
I think the where this works is that even if you start with the model to a certain point, like I love whiteboards and building it out. So in the same way that if you're taking some of those models where the value is actually your annotations on it, Rashid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that you're progressing them
it.
down, because there is a base level by which I can just look at it and I can see it. Now, if you then turned and hit another button and it turned into the full model, it's very different to you writing as you explain on top of it and taking and drawing it through the process, because it can just be one little arrow that goes back the other way that changes the context of everything.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and I think that also brings it down to a more collaborative era. I can be very passive watching a PowerPoint.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can basically check out mentally watching. I'm going to get it anyway. It's they'll email it to me. I don't have to do too much. Whereas when you're getting that drawing and those sorts of things, and as Damien said, some people like the detail.
Yeah.
So you've still got everything to go back there, and you can give them the references on the models and all this stuff. But the actual being in the moment, that drawing and that teasing it out. And well, hang on, when you say people prefer pain, what about the financial gain that they can get? You'll get a conversation like that. They're losing money and they could make money. Why wouldn't they do it?
Yep.
And that may be that's the accountant in me looking at that and questioning that. But at least I've got the opportunity to do it. If I just saw pain gain as a PowerPoint slide, I'll just naturally say, oh, well, they'll go for gain. I don't really understand it. And when you say, well, they'll go more for pain, I go, well, no, they don't, because I haven't had a chance to tease that through as it grows.
And I think it's what you mentioned earlier, Rashid, about presentation versus facilitation. And I think what you've done today it's been great. You've been facilitating, you're talking about the annotations and all that from a biological point of view, what happens in the brain. It's, people notice it more, people remember it more, there are more path memories made if it's more relevant and specific to them and they're noticing it more. And by you doing annotations on, red pain, green gain on the other side of another chart, that means more pathways are going to be, created and people are going to remember it more. So absolutely, if you're asking for sort of feedback on how that, what's been great, that absolutely, yeah. For you I would say have the mindset of, even if there are two people in this session, it's a facilitation session rather than a presentation session. And I think that's not relevant just for you. I think that's relevant to any sales people. Any sales presentation, if we shift the mindset slightly to a facilitation, that's automatically making it more personal to the person, the client, the people you're speaking to, which goes back to what you're talking to before about, finding their specific problem, making it relevant to their business. Again, it's whether it's a business of talking to us in a virtual room here or talking to a boardroom of 20 people or decision makers. It's the same sort of thing. So I think it's, a lot of elements tie into what we were immediately talking about just now, but also what you were talking to throughout the last hour.
Yeah, because go on.
I was going to say, as Dave said, the sooner they know that the quicker the conversation moves of value. It's almost like once I know that you get it, I've gone, that's, right, he understands this. In fact, he understands it better than we do.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well, give me more. Now I'm hooked. But up until that point, not interested. I'm disputing the fact that you understand this.
Yeah.
You can't understand our problem.
Yeah.
You're just another salesperson.
Because the better you can demonstrate you understand their problem, almost better than they do. And in fact, what I also do, and I'll just do this for a second. I'll just find a blank piece there. Okay. So what I say is, here, bloody pen keeps turning off. Okay. So here's the supposed problem. Okay. that they've got. But there's stuff that happens above it. That is causing this problem. There's stuff that happens before it. There's stuff that happens after it. There are smaller segments of this problem. Okay? And if you can show somebody all of these different things and say, oh, hey, hang on, you think that this is the problem, and I agree with you, this is the problem at this level, over here, but have you considered these things? Now, it's not yeah, go on.
Sorry, what you then get if you have a sales conversation, and as we know, nowadays you don't just get one person in a room. There's not one decision maker anymore. You get a conversation going in the group. You then see how they interact. You then see who the ultimate decision maker is. You then see how the network really works. You walk away as a facilitator that listens, is alert, is not just flogging stuff. He is a person that listens, is part of that development of it all.
Yes.
And I think that's we cannot do it the old ways. 3 copies pressed hard, these days are gone. They really are gone. Don't try that with a millennial. Just don't. But, so it's not a sales presentation anymore. It's a sales facilitation. See whether we can help you. Let's work through this because it's collaborative. I don't know everything, and we might discover something that nobody had thought of.
But what this does over here, doing this, not quite what I had in mind, is it also gives you the opportunity to say, okay, we're gonna solve this particular problem here right now, okay? But we also need to have a conversation about this one here, this one here, this one here, and these here at some point. Because you've suddenly broadened out the scope, but you don't want to do it in such a way that it becomes overwhelming. And to say, oh, well, it's all too much and I can't do any of this. No. We're going to start here. We're going to solve this one. It's going to be a relatively short, easy solution in comparison, because that's where the pain is right now. So the mistake that people make is that they talk about all of the stuff that they can do rather than simply focusing on the particular symptoms that this particular person has. And the symptom, whatever the symptom is, I'm not making enough money, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, whatever. They're symptoms. So problems relate to symptoms because symptoms are identifiable. They're both logical. I have logical things and I have emotional things. So what are the things I'm seeing? Logical is money, time. Not enough money, not enough time. Emotional is stress, overwhelm, lack of sleep. And you need to look at both of those things and say, okay, one is causing the other one. If we fix this one, is it going to fix that one? If I have more money and I know it's stable and I'm profitable, that reduces my stress level. It enhances my family life. I'm not in the office all the time.
Nor am I grumpy all the time.
Nor am I grumpy. Yes.
And I think as good salespeople from my previous, existence last 10 years, it's been selling to agencies who are responsible for big enterprise clients, and knowing the logistical, the logical and the emotional is very much part of it. Having the two intertwined and understanding, yes, there are logical business issues, but then also the emotional side of it. Okay, what's keeping the agency up at night? What's keeping the CMO up at night? What's keeping the key decision makers up at night? And what are the sort of the different level problems that each are having? Yes, it may be sales on a base level, but it may be, okay, well, there are other issues within the business. Okay, I'll drill down into that. Is there a secondary problem we can try and find here? So it's not just about, okay, it's then, as you're talking about, targeting lots of individual problems, going with them on the journey, becoming that, for want of a slightly overused phrase, but it's, trusted advisor, and being with them on the journey. And the more you can be with them on the journey, then the more that you what is it? It's everything other than the 3%. 3% ready to buy, all the rest of it, open to conversion. If you're creating that relationship, that journey, that presence with that person, as you say, different touch points along the way, they're going to be ready to, when they're ready to, you're going to be the person who's going to be by their side to be able to take advantage of what they need. And if you're presenting a problem to them that they may not even know of, you go, okay, well, I can see X, Y, Z, A, B, C. They may only be looking at A, B, and C, and you can go with a more holistic view and go, okay, then you're potentially presenting problems back to them that they didn't realize, and therefore a solution also tied with it.
Yep. Because we're all there are a number of fundamental motivators, and we'll bring it to a close after that. The fundamental motivators are money, time, risk, and status. Napoleon Bonaparte was famous for saying something along the lines of recognition. Well, he basically said medals. Recognition, babies cry for it, grown men die for it. Why do you think they give medals? Okay. And if we look at the palaver that was happening with the Australian Defence Force, where they were talking about taking away some of those medals, boy, oh boy. Okay. Recognition, and then well-being, some form of well-being, emotional, lifestyle, whatever it is. And if you can cover one or more of those things, and the bottom two are really logical, the rest of them are emotional, status, well-being, energy. You'll have a much more comprehensive solution if you do that. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you very much for hanging in there.
No, thank you and Barbara. It was a great session. I really enjoyed it, and Damon, thanks for all your insights too.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's right. No, it was the first of the sessions I've been on, and had a little bit of a conversations over the past sort of month or so with Rashid. So it was good to sort of be here. Hopefully, sort of give some input, but also see what you guys have are about and got to offer. So it's been great. So thank you. A lot of notes and screen grabs and stuff. So yeah,
if you want the recording, I'll send it to you. Just let me know.
Good to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Thank you both of you.
See you.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.